Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I know it's late in the day, and so sometimes we might want to catch a flight, take a nap, do something like that. It's been a long conference, so I do absolutely appreciate you guys coming. We're going to talk about how elephants can still dance, an IBM DevOps story. I chose that title just as a little background for you. In the 1990s, IBM hired a man named Lou Gerstner, who's attributed with some of our turnaround. He wrote a book after that that said, "Elephants Can Still Dance," which was about his IBM turnaround. I'm the CTO and Distinguished Engineer for our IBM Services Managed Application Services. And let's get to it. Let me tell you a little bit about what my part of the business is, because as you know, IBM is a big place. We do a lot of different things. I do the managed application space, particularly on the cloud. My focus is SAP, but I also do Oracle, e-commerce, just straight up managed VMs. Mainly in this talk, I'll talk a little bit mainly about SAP, because that's my biggest part of the business. We have about 450 customers. We pull in about $1 billion of revenue every year. And we're, as an organization on the technical side, about 1,700 people technically. That's talking development, delivery operations, anybody who's doing technical work. The rest are probably marketing and what have you. Give you an idea of our growth. We're growing at about 66% year over year, just in straight VMs that grow out. And the chart there is really just to give you a view of what my customers are buying in the managed OS or managed SAP, for example. They're sort of working up the stack. That's what I'm doing. You know, you can come to our cloud and run your own thing, and that's great. But we kind of find customers would prefer IBM to do that as well. So I'll do everything from doing their database to doing their database, middleware, SAP Basis, for example, everything except for designing maybe their business process app. I'll call in other IBM colleagues to do that, and then they'll deploy it in. We have a portal, all the basic things that you would expect. We run it 24/7. This is just to give you a view of how big this is. So this is a worldwide implementation. You can see I have data centers everywhere in the world, all major geos. My development locations are worldwide as well. So China, India, Minnesota, Germany, Austin, even Raleigh, where I'm from. So it's a very distributed team, very worldwide. So I want to take a few minutes to give people context, especially as I was in, the expo the other day explaining to a vendor what I did, and he said, I don't even know what SAP is, and why I care about it. So it's actually really important. It runs the back end of many systems. It's in 80% of the Fortune 500 companies. And what does it run? It runs the factories. It runs your payroll. It runs supply chains, etc. I would tell you, my first day on the job, I got thrown into the fire helping a customer that was having performance problems. The stuff that they rolled out with us wasn't working. Fixing it, doing configurations. The next thing I know, I go home. I think I'm having a pleasant evening until someone calls me and says, their database is corrupted. Oh, that's really bad. You have to restore that from backup. Well, the other thing, this is about how complex it is. These databases are huge, sometimes up to 24 terabytes. So they run in memory, and they're quite large. So just imagine how long it takes to restore a multi-terabyte database. It takes many hours. In this particular customer scenario, the restore didn't work. We had to do another restore. Finally, the customer, as we work on it all night together, gets on the phone to tell IBM he's going to have to shut down the factory, shut it down for the day, and send everybody home. That's a pretty big deal, right? The impacts are huge, right? You seem it's very subtle, and not everybody understands, but these impacts are huge to companies. There are millions of dollars on the line every time. As I said, it's really complex. I added up all the combinations that we support. These are the packages that come with it, which could be around finance or an industry you're in, like oil and gas. I have 190 of them. So sometimes I feel like, the concepts of snowflakes. I feel like there's a snowstorm going on in my world a lot of times. The restart process itself is very convoluted. It's not simple like on a laptop, or it seems like in every other modern application where you can just do it and it restarts. I counted it up for this presentation, 26 steps, 26 separate steps that we're always automating and doing to get through. God forbid you have to do an update, which happens all the time, or patch. That's at least 45 steps that's going on. So it is a very complicated system that runs many of our businesses. I suspect if you didn't know, go back and ask if we're running SAP. We run it at IBM. You probably are, and it's very important to you. So now you know what I did. Let me tell you why we decided to do this DevOps journey. In 2017, across IBM, we decided to adopt the Net Promoter Score to kind of drive a really view of what our customers were viewing, and what they thought of us. It's not like we didn't track customer sat before. We certainly did. But we really kind of just decided to all do it on the NPS score. So we got our first NPS score back, and it was really low. In fact, that angry mob over there is how I felt my first month at work with every customer that I talked to. They were very unhappy. And some of the things they were very unhappy with were availability, like the story that I just shared, where a customer, took an outage, corruption of a database, et cetera. I mean, they didn't always know why their outage happens per se, but they know they were having them. They said, I think it's a long time to deliver, right? Meaning the features that they wanted took forever for us to put in and send out. The impression was there were lots of handoffs. It just took forever to do anything. And they wanted more self-service needs, right? Those were the top three reasons that they said, we got the stinky score. I observed in my time there, we were just way, way too slow, right? So one of the first things I did when I got on the scene, how's it going? How long is our dev cycle? I found some projects that had been going on for a year and hadn't gotten their feature out. And somehow people weren't sure that was a big problem. But I kind of thought it was, because it shouldn't take a year to get some features out. That's just really long. When I kind of dug in why, you'd find there wasn't any end-to-end ownership, right? From the whole deployment, people were sort of lost in the requirements and getting implemented. Oh, I'm waiting for feedback. Oh, I got some bugs. I got to get them fixed, etc. Right? Going on and on. When I looked at even our end-to-end delivery, it was incredibly complicated. Our entire, really even development to delivery, was very technology domain oriented, perhaps because we're IBM and we're a bunch of techies. But, there was SAP basis teams, database teams, OS teams, storage teams, etc. On the development side, same thing. There were monitoring developers. There were teams that were doing just one little piece, and that was it. And a project manager for every one of them to help herd the cats. The cats were everywhere. There was really nobody driving the end-to-end. We definitely had the Brent problem as the Phoenix project, where we had single points of, bottlenecks of people that just got overwhelmed, that they were the go-to person for everyone. They were time slicing across 20 different projects. Nothing was getting done. The delivery was having so many issues with the herding of the cats in the technology domain that what they had to do was create what they called the major incident manager, whose job, not quite like a incident commander, but sort of, was to really corral everybody to work a problem. You would get on a call and there'd be 20 people trying to solve the same problem. And it was incredibly ineffective, and really no one took the ownership. So we decided we had to reboot ourselves. And we came up with these 3 key ingredients to where we wanted to go. And this is both a development and delivery model. We decided to merge our organizations there together as part of this. So we started by adopting a tribe and squad model. If you're not familiar with that, it comes out of Spotify. In particular, some of what they do is you set up squads that are about 10 people big, and then they do a particular component, and then all those components maybe roll up into a tribe. And so that's how we decided to reorganize ourselves at a very high level. But we wanted to shift away from the technology, subject matter expert orientation, to really the service, because at the end of the day, what are people buying from me? They're buying managed SAP, managed Oracle. They're not necessarily buying storage, a VM, and operating system. They're buying a managed service, and that's what they want. I know this seems obvious. It seemed obvious to me, but an automation-first culture, there was very little automation going on. When I went and asked, actually, I would say on both sides, right? I asked the developers, they'd gotten their pipeline part of the way, and then when they went to deploy it to production, they had to fill out a checklist with the delivery team to get it deployed, which seemed to take forever, and had several meetings wrapped around it to decide, should we deploy it? When I went to the delivery team, I said, why are you making them follow this checklist? You have to go all the way through. They said, well, the code quality has been so poor that we don't want to let anything in the door because it's resulting in outages that I'm having to deal with my customers. Okay, so we obviously decided we needed to get automation first at every part of this culture. And the third one, redundancy and rerouting, right? This is kind of the notion of everything we're putting out, you should assume is going to fail at some point. It will have a failure, and you need to plan for that, route for that. You should never be surprised when any component you put out there fails. It's going to happen. Next. At a high level, we organize our tribes and squads into three major areas. Our client tribes, which were often called trios because they have a follow-the-sun model. And they have a set of clients assigned to them that 450 get assigned out to a trio. So we no longer, at kind of that operations level, do the traditional pool where you call 1-800 and you get someone and they know nothing about you. When you have an incident, these people pick it up or change, and they actually do know about your environment, what's important to you, and they're experts in that area. They're also the face to the customer. Part of our model, many of these folks do planning with our customers. When the customers are deciding they want to add more landscapes or grow things or understand how their capacity profile is going, they work with those customers. So they're also the first face to the customer. We added folks into their teams to do development to help automate as well. And we added some rules that said, look, if a client trio can't fix a problem in 25 minutes, they need to call the service tribe. And the service tribe, if I said, we aligned on things like managed SAP instead of storage or network, et cetera. And these guys, they own it end to end. It is their job to automate that service and really drive the entire life cycle of it. So that's the deployment, configuration, development, the monitoring, updating, all of that. They have the end-to-end responsibility. Really have a full stack view. The last one is to the infrastructure tribe, and it's kind of an internal-facing one, if you will. That's really what the client and the service tribes, they leverage those things. That's the people that run the physical infrastructure. That's the people that run the systems like incident problem and change, monitoring systems, any kind of tools that all the other tribes want to leverage and use. The infrastructure tribe runs those. Give you a view of a before and after as we move to this model. Again, before we were very technology focused, like all the OS skills, all on one team. In this model, they're now all dispersed across. That's an example of an SAP squad, right? You might have a UI developer in there. You need an SAP developer in there. You're going to need a guy that understands the OS, somebody who understands the database, all of those things. They are meant to be an end-to-end unit. So out of this, we came up with our tribes. Yay. This is what we started with. And the other thing that we added, and I can't emphasize enough, is kind of a two-in-the-box model. So we always put a senior manager and a senior technical leader in charge of the tribe, and they're peers. They're not, one's not working for the other. They're a team together. They are the dynamic duo to get it done. Ideally, we would have loved if offering management sat in our organization, but they did not. They sit out. That's like our product managers. But we did work with them and say, I think you really need to line up on our model. And they did. They said, you're right. I want to line up with you. So they would add an offering manager into that model. So now we have a trio of people whose job it is to run essentially that tribe as a business, right? From the business, from the technical, from the new features. They did all that planning together. Very, very successful. So we started this. We took about 5 squads worth of people and did it over the summer. right? Said, leave your job, you have a new role in the whatever squad, right? And see how they did. This was like our pilot. And they did awesome. They were rocking it. Automations were flying out. They are delivering all the time. We're super excited. And we said, great, now how do we roll this out? How do you roll this out? I have 1,700 people. If I did 50 people a month, 5 squads, I'm there for almost 3 years. I can't wait 3 years. Right? I already covered my customers are wanting to lynch me, okay? They're very unhappy. And the culture, wasn't a happy culture either, right? The delivery, the development people, there was a lot of infighting that was going on, so it wasn't anything that we wanted to sustain for 3 years. So what do you do? Again, 1,700 people, how do you roll this out? So this is where we got a little creative. We call it the draft. And it was a draft. It was like the NFL, where you draft players into your team. We briefed everybody on an all hands on, hey, everybody, these squads and tribes are coming, get excited, rah, rah, right? We sent them all a survey. Well, if you had to pick your job, what's one of the top 3 tribes you would want to be in? And tell us. Because we wanted to do our best to try to align people to the tribe that they actually wanted to be a part of. Because, oddly enough, people are, happier when they're working on something they actually want to work on. It seems kind of self-obvious. We took some people, and I'll say we roped them off. So anybody who was customer-facing, those technical leads, nobody likes it if you take Sally away from their customer. The customer gets pretty upset. So we said, you don't have to be in the draft. You get to keep doing your job. You'll end up in a squad, but I'm not going to disrupt you. And the people that are, say, I have some physical infrastructure, the people that manage a network switch or a storage device, you get to keep doing that job too, because I can't remake that very easily. But everybody else, they go into a pool. And we literally built the teams from scratch from that, okay? We took our technical leaders and our business leaders, and they became like the coach of the team, man. This is like, the Denver Broncos. You are SAP tribe. That is your job, man. Now it's time to draft your team for the rest of 2017. We gave them a budget. Budget meaning the amount of people. You didn't get, endless, right? Here's your budget of people. You can have X amount of people, and that's it. And it was a mix, to be honest, of major market and growth markets, because you could see I'm worldwide, right? So we're try to be in this kind of major market and, this amount of major market, this amount of growth market. They got your survey results. You know what people wanted to do. We said, please try to co-locate squads together, because that's most effective. You know your mission, your SAP, your Oracle, you're running incident problem change. And they built the teams from scratch. So let me tell you how we did that. Because we did it in 3 days. So what we did was we made draft days, right? We did 3 of them. And at first we were going to go person by person and determine that probably was not the most efficient way to do this. So we would, everybody, one guy overnight literally built a little database that had everybody's name and what they wanted to do and what their skills were, right? So we had some data about these people. And on draft day, all your, the SAP team, the Oracle team, you only knew, there's 2 of you, your business leader, your technical leader, time to draft. You get, first day was about 30 people. So go draft 30 people into your squads. That's, your choice. You want to draft managers, you want to draft all developers, that's up to you, but you're going to own it end to end. So if you want to draft 100% developers, that's great, but you're going to own the operations of it as well. You want to do only operations people? That's fine too, but you are going to own all the development for it. So think about what you want to build. So, we opened up draft day at 9 a.m. Hooray. Everybody goes out and clicks on who they want. Our 30 people, because again, we decided we couldn't do one at a time. It would take too long. And during that day, you'd have some conflicts, right? I want Gene, you want Gene. What are we going to do? We had the day to talk about it. Hey, man, I really want Gene because he's awesome, and I'd really like I really want Gene too. Oh, we can't figure this out. Darn. Next day, reconciliation time before we start the next round of the draft. This is where you get your draft pick. So you'd go through and we'd go, all right, I've got a conflict between SAP and Oracle on Gene. SAP, I'm using my draft one pick. Okay, you get Gene. Done. I've never seen such a fast reorg in my life. Okay, we did give everybody an opportunity. They had an opportunity to, escalate up to management if they really thought this was wrong and say, no, man, I have to have Gene or like the world implodes. Nobody escalated up. We just did it. So we do our 3 days of this, right? And what happens next? Well, I don't know how to tell you this, but there were some undraftables. People that didn't get drafted. And they were, in some cases, they were part-time resources from within IBM. So somebody who was on loan from another part of IBM at large. And really, if you're thinking you're building your team for the Super Bowl, do you want a part-time resource? No. So get rid of those people. There were functions people didn't really value enough to put a full-time person on it. So an example was, so those people didn't get drafted either, like documentation. It's not like people didn't need to do documentation. We absolutely need to document what we do. But do you want a full-time person doing documentation in your squad? Or do you want your developers to do it? Right? So people really prioritize because they have to own it end to end. So we went through that and we dealt with the undraftables, and some of those people we said, great, you need to get reskilled, time to learn some new stuff, you will find a home. And afterwards, we allowed what we call trades, just like they do in the NFL. So, if somebody wasn't working out on your team, you could call up another team and say, Sam's not working out. I think he would do better with you. Do you have anybody that you might want to send to me? And you could trade people. And that's what we did. So you're now probably wondering, did this work out? Did this help us, right? Did we get any improvements out of this? Again, the fastest reorg I've ever done in 3 days. There was transition period, but it was pretty short. Here's my how's it going? Here's the lessons learned, right? So it worked pretty well enough that IBM took 2 other acquisitions they made, and they said, they're now part of your organization. So we're merging them into tribes and squads as well. So I think that's a good affirmation. When we looked at employee engagement, morale, it went up dramatically, actually, a few months later. It was actually about 1 point away from the best of breed of IBM for morale. Our outages, down 60%. 60% it went down. That's a huge thing, right? Remember, all my customers are mad. One of the number 1 issues, down 60%. Just SAP itself, by the way, added over 1,000 new systems. And we did that while we reduced that staff by 25%. So outages are down, I just reduced my staff, and I grew at the same time. Ticket backlogs down 74%. Build times 120% faster. Piloting was really helpful in this. If you ever want to do one of these things, the fact that we did it for a couple months with 5 squads, super helpful, because we learned a few pitfalls that would have been kind of bad to have learned later. I think strong leadership is really important here as well. It's not just about having a strong process. As a leadership team, we all sort of said, we're doing this. There's going to be bumps. We're going to find things that we forgot or didn't do, and we're going to have to go fix it. And having that leadership really makes a difference, right? But let us not forget as well, you are changing the tire while you're driving down the road. That's the picture here, by the way, if you're wondering what it is. They're changing a tire while they're on the road driving. We found skill gaps that we were missing, documentation, or things that we just didn't know. But, you got to run the business at the same time. So it's important to understand that. It's not like you get to stop and do everything perfect. So now let's go on to a bit of how I need help and things that I would like to know. So I picked this quote from our CEO. Your value will not be what you know, it will be what you share. So I'm sharing with all of you, and I hope you will share back with me because I still have some problems to solve. So up in the upper left, just an example. And these are just pictures of the team, I think you'd like to see some people working. Scaling this approach is daunting, right? So when they took those other 2 little acquisitions, it was like doubling our organization. So we were 2,000, now we're 4,000. And scaling that. But I sit in the services organization of IBM. It's 200,000 people, or just about. Probably fluctuates a little bit, but that's a lot of people. When we talk around this in the IBM, they kind of go, our senior vice president said, how are you going to scale that out? And we went, we'll get back to you on that one. That's a little hard. Thank you. And so if anybody has any bright ideas, feel free to share. When we've gone through this, and we still struggle with this today, I'll just say our corporate business systems are not always agile, but we are. And how do we reconcile that? So we're running 1,000 miles an hour, and like an HR system's updating every month or something. And so, we're running into these type of problems, or we're working with another part of IBM that's not agile. They might be doing something else, and we're just like, I need my stories, like I want this done in a week, and they're like, I need all my requirements, let's do some planning. So folks that have ideas, when you're agile but the other person isn't, how to work with them better, would love some tips on that. Skilling up fast. That's still a problem for us, right? We really figured out, we have to grow our skills more quickly than we ever did in the past. So loving some ideas on rapid ideas of how to do that. In particular, I'm doing things like boot camps. We're trying to do kind of intensive things, but I am open to suggestions on how to go make that happen. The last one, this is something we've kind of noticed over time. It's how to, manage those cross-tribe functions that need to be shared, right? How do we do that? Because we've told everybody, you're running your business, your SAP, your Oracle, but there's some things that they might have to do together. I used open source certification, which is an internal IBM thing, but of course, we get to use open source tools in IBM, but like somebody in IBM likes to review that legal agreement, right? Obviously, to make sure that, we didn't just like sign away IBM or expose it. And so there's a whole process when they have a list of already approved things, but if there's something not on the list, there's a process to get it approved. But I don't want all the tribes having to go through that process. I mean, seems like a major pain, right? So for ways for them to, do something that's cross-tribe, but we're not cross-tribe. So we're struggling on those things, or even just a little bit with standards across the tribes and making sure we're getting some standardization. We've now started to explore some notions of guilds, again, from Spotify, to do a horizontal type of view. But I'm not sure we're quite as successful at it yet as we need to be. So love some ideas about that. This is my last slide. I will ask, so I've put an ask out to all of you to help. So please do. Feedback to me, hit me on Slack. You can find my email, I'm sure, Twitter handle, all that stuff. I probably should have added it onto a slide. But I'd love to hear from you. And this has been a great journey. We've been excited about it and happy with its results. And we're continuing to do it. It certainly doesn't stop, right? We're doing it all the time and improving all the time. And I just want to say thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming to the session.